You say you're fine. You show up. You smile. You laugh at the right moments. But somewhere behind your eyes, something aches. Not sharp, not loud, just heavy. Like a backpack you've worn so long, you forgot it wasn't part of your body. And every time someone asks, "Are you okay?" you feel a flicker, then shut it down. You've trained yourself to say, "I'm good," even when you're not. Because if you stop and really feel what's there, you're afraid it might undo you. So you keep going. You get things done. You stay productive. You stay distracted. But emotions don't vanish when you ignore them. They wait. They get quiet. Then they find another way to speak. Sometimes through exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. Sometimes through irritability over nothing. Sometimes through that hollow feeling you can't name, but know all too well. This isn't weakness. It's a warning. Because unspoken emotions don't die. They bury themselves in your chest, in your gut, in the tension behind your eyes. And when they've been silenced too long, they stop knocking gently. They start breaking doors. So what really happens when you ignore your emotions too long? In this video, we'll uncover what suppressed feelings do to your mind, body, and relationships. You'll learn why emotional honesty isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And how reconnecting with your emotions isn't about being dramatic, it's about being alive. Because your feelings were never meant to be feared, they were meant to be heard. Emotions don't disappear, they disguise themselves. You can ignore your feelings, but they won't ignore you. See, emotions are messengers. They come with information about what matters, what hurts, what you need. And when you silence them, they don't disappear. They find new costumes. Sadness puts on the mask of fatigue. Anger dresses up as sarcasm. Fear hides inside chronic overthinking. Loneliness becomes a hunger you can't quite name. And suddenly you're not emotional. You're just tired. Just burnt out. Just not feeling like yourself. But it's not random. It's not mysterious. It's the weight of unspoken truth echoing in other parts of your life. Think about it. That tightness in your chest before a conversation you're avoiding. That restlessness you feel at night when the world gets quiet. That way your stomach turns before seeing someone who once hurt you. These are not coincidences. They are signals. Your body becomes the storage unit for everything your mind refuses to unpack. And the longer you suppress, the more your feelings get distorted. A small disappointment turns into explosive resentment. A passing insecurity grows into self-hatred. A moment of fear evolves into full-on anxiety. Because emotions don't need to be allowed to do damage. They just need to be ignored long enough. Over time, you begin to live from the outside in, managing appearances, chasing control, but feeling like a stranger to yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You second-guess your decisions. You wonder why life feels numb, even when it looks fine. The truth? You haven't lost yourself. You've just lost connection with what you feel, and it's not too late to return. Because emotions are patient. They'll wait years if they have to. They'll knock again, quieter, louder, through dreams, through symptoms, until you finally stop and say, "I hear you." That moment, that's where healing begins. The cost of emotional suppression. We're taught to be strong, to keep our heads down, to get over it, to not make it a big deal. So we do. We swallow our anger. We laugh off our sadness. We bury disappointment under productivity. We call it being mature, being professional, being resilient. But let's tell the truth. Suppressing your emotions doesn't make you stronger. It just makes your pain harder to trace. Because every time you silence a feeling, you send yourself a message. This part of me doesn't matter. This need is inconvenient. This sadness isn't valid. And over time, that message rewires how you relate to yourself. You become excellent at pleasing others and terrible at recognizing your own limits. You show up for everyone and slowly stop showing up for yourself. You function, you perform, you even succeed. But inside, you feel like a machine, efficient but empty. The cost? You start snapping at people you love for things that aren't really the problem. You avoid conversations that matter. You numb out with food, with screens, with busyness, anything to stay disconnected. And what's worse, you begin to feel shame for the very emotions you tried to ignore. You're anxious, and then ashamed of being anxious. You're sad, and then frustrated for still feeling this way. You're angry, but afraid of being seen as too much. So you keep it all in, until one day it explodes. Not because you're unstable, but because even silence has a breaking point. Here's what most people don't realize. The longer you avoid your emotions, the more they control you. Not on the surface, but in your decisions, your reactions, your relationships. You don't trust people fully because you've never trusted your own emotional safety. You stay in situations too long because you've trained yourself to ignore discomfort. You say yes when you want to say no because listening to your needs feels foreign. This is the real cost, not the temporary pain of a hard feeling, but the long-term damage of never honoring it, because you can only suppress for so long before your mind begins to break or your body takes the fall. But there's another way, a slower, softer, braver way, and it starts not with fixing, but with listening. Because feeling something, anything, isn't failure, it's feedback, and that feedback might be the most honest part of you, where we learn to ignore ourselves. You weren't born ignoring your emotions. As a child, you cried when you were sad. You shouted when you were angry. You ran to someone when you were scared. Your body knew how to ask for help. Your feelings were honest, immediate, unfiltered. But slowly, often quietly, you learned not to be that way. Maybe it was when someone said, "Stop crying, you're fine," or when your anger was punished instead of understood. Maybe your sadness was met with silence, or your fear with laughter. Or maybe no one said anything at all. Maybe they were too busy, too overwhelmed, too unavailable. And so you stopped showing, stopped asking, stopped feeling, out loud at least. You told yourself it was no big deal. You learned to shrink your sadness, to edit your feelings into something more acceptable. Because somewhere along the way, you got the message, you're easier to love when you're easy to handle. So you performed being okay. You became self-sufficient, agreeable, polite. You stopped being too sensitive. You became strong. But strength that's built on disconnection isn't strength, it's survival. And the tricky thing is, it works. People praised your independence. They admired how low maintenance you were. They called you calm, grounded, unshakable. But inside, you began to disappear. Not dramatically, quietly, like a voice getting softer every time it's ignored, until it forgets how to speak at all. And now, as an adult, when something hurts, you don't cry. You work, you scroll, you fix someone else's problem instead. Not because you don't feel, but because you were never taught how to stay with your own feelings long enough to hear what they're saying. But hear this, it wasn't your fault. You didn't fail at being emotionally healthy. You adapted to what you were given. You made sense in a world that didn't make room for your inner world. But now, you get to do something different. You get to notice when your body tenses before a truth. You get to question the instinct that says, "Don't go there." You get to ask yourself, not just what you're thinking, but what you're feeling. And when the answer comes, even in a whisper, you get to listen. Because relearning how to feel is not regression, it's reclamation. You're not falling apart, you're coming back to yourself. The mind-body split, when emotions turn physical. We like to think of the mind and body as separate. Thoughts are for therapy, symptoms are for doctors. Emotions? We assume they live only in the brain. But your body disagrees. Because when emotions go unspoken, your body becomes the voice. It trembles when you try to stay calm. It clenches when you try to smile. It aches when you pretend not to care. This is the mind-body split. The illusion that you can suppress your feelings without consequences. You may not say you're overwhelmed, but your shoulders scream it. You may not admit you're grieving, but your sleep breaks into fragments every night. You may tell yourself you're over it, but your stomach twists at the thought of seeing them again. Science backs this up. Chronic emotional suppression has been linked to high blood pressure, fatigue, tension headaches, digestive issues, and even weakened immune response. Not because feelings are toxic, but because silencing them is. Your body doesn't lie, even when your words do. And the longer you ignore the signals, the louder they get. Until your body is the one that finally makes you stop. Through burnout, breakdown, illness, or a quiet collapse that no one else sees, but you feel in your bones. And here's the cruel irony. You think you're holding it together, but what you're really holding is yourself hostage. You're asking your body to carry what your heart never got to release. But your body isn't the enemy. It's the messenger, the witness, the one that never left, even when your mind shut the door. So what do? You begin to listen again, not just to your thoughts, but to your tension, your fatigue, your unease. You treat discomfort not as a defect, but as data. You ask not just, what's wrong with me, but what have I been holding for too long? And slowly, gently, you let your body speak the truth you've been too scared to feel. Because healing isn't just cognitive, it's cellular. And the road back to emotional well-being starts with honoring the place where those feelings live. Right here, beneath your skin, between your breaths, in the language your body's been speaking all along. Emotional honesty, a practice, not a personality trait. Some people make it look easy. They cry when they're sad. They say what they need. They ask for space. They ask for help. And you wonder, how do they do that? Why can't I? But here's the truth. Emotional honesty isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It's not a personality trait. It's a practice. And like any practice, it starts small, with noticing, not judging. Instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this way, you ask, what exactly is this feeling? Instead of saying, I don't know why I'm upset, you ask, when did this feeling begin? And when someone checks in on you, you don't have to spill everything. You can start with something simple, something real. I've been carrying a lot. I'm not sure how I feel, but I know I'm feeling something. I'm just trying to be honest with myself today. You don't need eloquence, you need willingness. Because emotional honesty doesn't mean you're always composed or always clear. It means you're willing to be seen as you are, in progress, in process, in truth. And no, it won't always be met with perfect understanding. Some people won't know how to hold your honesty. But the more you show up that way, the more you start attracting people who can. People who say, me too, instead of, that's a lot. People who stay present, not because they have answers, but because they know how to sit beside pain without flinching. And more importantly, you start showing up for yourself like that. You stop gaslighting your own pain. You stop editing your truth to keep others comfortable. You stop mistaking suppression for strength. And you begin to rebuild trust, not just with others, but with the deepest parts of you. Because emotional honesty doesn't just change relationships. It restores the relationship you have with your own heart. And that's where everything begins again, not with perfect healing, but with honest presence. You can't be whole if you're not being real, and you don't have to be fearless to be honest. You just have to decide, today I will stop pretending I'm fine. Today I will listen, not just to my thoughts, but what's been waiting to be felt. Listening to what hurts before it screams. There's a point when silence becomes too loud to bear, when your body aches for no reason, when your joy feels muted, when your days blur and you start asking, why do I feel so far from myself? And maybe, just maybe, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've been ignoring something essential, your own truth. Emotions aren't interruptions, they're invitations. Invitations to pause, to look inward, to meet yourself where it hurts. And yes, feeling what you've avoided can be scary. It can feel like opening a door to a room you've locked for years. But what if there's light in there too? What if it's not just grief, but clarity? Not just fear, but freedom? Because you can only outrun yourself for so long. Eventually, the part of you that's been silenced will ask to be heard, not to destroy you, but to return you to wholeness, to softness, to truth. So if you've been holding your breath for a long time, this is your permission to exhale, to sit still, to listen in, to say with gentleness and courage, I may not have all the answers, but I'm ready to stop pretending I'm fine. And in that moment, healing doesn't begin with fixing. It begins with honesty, because your feelings aren't flaws, they're feedback, and the longer you ignore them, the louder they'll knock. But the sooner you listen, the sooner you come home, not to the person you're supposed to be, but to the one you've always been, fully human, fully feeling, finally heard.